Hello, all. The book I chose to read for this semester was Damaged by Cathy Glass. This book features a little girl named Jody. Cathy Glass in this book is a foster care specialist, and she was specifically called on to take on the duties of Jody. The reason she was called is because Jody had 5 placements in 4 months. Families just could not handle the behavioral challenges that came with Jody, as well as the learning disabilities that came along with Jody. She was a very difficult child to manage, and so the foster care system actually called up Cathy Glass and asked her to take on the challenge. If not, they told her that they would have to put Jody in a residential unit, which, those of you who are not familiar, is just kind of like a permanent home for foster care children, and it's not really the optimal choice for children in the system. Throughout the book, Jody displays all kinds of types of behavior that are troubling. The first thing she does after she's alone with Cathy is she soils herself and then wipes excrement on her face. And this isn't the first or last time she chooses to soil herself in front of a caregiver. She is very violent. She has very violent tendencies towards Cathy, towards some of her caseworkers, and towards some of Cathy's children. In the book, Cathy has 2 of her own children and 1 adopted child who used to be a long-term foster care child. Cathy Glass is a remarkable woman who has fostered over 150 children for over the course of 25 years, and this is just one of her stories, and she states that it's truly one of the most disturbing cases that she's ever taken on. Jody experiences some severe child abuse when she was before the age of 8, and she was in a pedophile ring, and she was abused by both of her parents and people who she believed was her aunts, her uncles, and her grandparents, which comes to find out they weren't related to her at all. This was just a method used to trick Jody into trusting these people. Jody learns to trust Cathy Glass enough to explain these things to Cathy, which is new information to everyone. Out of everybody on her case, Cathy was the first to discover these things, even though Jody was at risk, on the at-risk roster the entire time she was born, up until she was 8 and actually taken out of the home. This book was morbidly interesting. You get to see this deeply disturbed child who mumbles to herself, has splits in her personality where she takes on the personas of Amy, of little baby, and she regresses in behavior and like pees her pants, babbles in a baby voice, or she shows another persona which is named the Reg, who's very violent and angry and curses at people. Jody has no sense of attachment or trust. Cathy talks about in vivid detail that Jody doesn't even get to experience the world as is. She doesn't get the luxury to see color or just like experience the senses. She's very numb to her environment. And Cathy Glass has like a really interesting way of describing her experience with this child. I love this book so much that I had a very hard time putting it down. I actually blew through it in a few days, which says a lot. I'm not an avid reader. And after this book, I recommended it to my mom. She's reading it currently. She's about 1/8 of a way in. And I went out and purchased Cathy Glass, Will You Love Me? For those of you who read the book, it's about her adopted daughter Lucy, who is in the story. And I look forward to reading that as well. One insight that Cathy Glass offers that was very interesting in the book is how a lot of Jody's caseworkers managed to fail her and why. One of which was a lot of social workers don't like to go to the house because they're typically women and there's a level of immunity that comes with being a parent of children who are on the at-risk roster, and oftentimes social workers do not report um, any violent behavior towards them in hopes to build a relationships with these families. And so, you know, if a social worker has to go into that environment, odds are they're very short visits that lack the proper amount of questions just to keep the social worker safe. They typically go alone. And the caseworker in Jody's case, Cathy mentioned several times that the caseworker refused to come visit when she should have, and didn't even read Jody's case, which was like, I think she said like 2 briefcases full of information. And Cathy mentions that there were just a lot of mishandling and mistakes that were had in the care of Jody. Thankfully, though, Cathy got Jody to open up through allowing Jody to trust her, and they got her into a therapeutic unit full of other children who experience the same thing as Jody. It's this house that's run by this couple who have like a supporting staff. They will find the best solution for Jody. Cathy tells us that, you know, there's no fairy tale ending for people like Jody. They're just going to do their best. And yeah, it's really a heartbreaking book. It's not for those who are lighthearted. It's very detailed. You get to see and hear all of the things that have happened to Jody with her parents, and it's very disturbing. It's a very good book. Cathy Glass is an amazing writer, and it's only about 300 plus pages long. All right, thanks.